So the next part of the United Kingdom I would like to show you is Northern Ireland. If you look at the map here, you can see this is in the north of the island of Ireland. The rest of the island is taken up by the Republic. Perhaps we can start with the etymology of the name again. The name of this island and the Republic in Irish Gaelic is Éire or Ire. Depending how you pronounce it. The name apparently derives from some Celtic goddess, and when the island was conquered by the English, they just took the local name Ire, and added the suffix land to it. So this is Ireland. Partially using the original Celtic name and partially using the suffix land, meaning basically land. If you remember our discussion of the historical maps and the changing names of various kingdoms in the British Isles, you probably remember the Kingdom of Munster that developed early in the Middle Ages and survived for a very long time in Ireland. The three remaining kingdoms of Ireland were Connacht, Leinster and Ulster. And of course today, from the perspective of this class, the Northern Kingdom of Ulster is the most important. If we look at the close-up of Ulster, you can see it consists of 9 counties, and these are the counties of Derry, sometimes called Londonderry. It really depends on your political stance. The Irish nationalists tend to call it Derry. The Unionists tend to call it Londonderry. The Irish nationalists just don't like the part London. So we have Derry, Antrim, Down, Armagh, Monaghan, Cavan, Tyrone, Fermanagh and Donegal. So 9 counties, but only 6 of these counties constitute today's Northern Ireland, so part of the United Kingdom. The 3 counties of Monaghan, Cavan and Donegal belong to the Irish Republic. So you can sometimes find the term Ulster used to mean Northern Ireland, especially when spoken by the Irish nationalists, but the staunchest of them tend to believe that it's not the whole of the historical kingdom of Ulster, and they sometimes call it the 6 counties. The 6 counties, meaning the 6 counties of Ulster, with those 3 belonging to the Republic of Ireland. This is one of the areas in the United Kingdom which I never visited. I actually visited the Republic of Ireland many times, and saw a lot of interesting places there, Dublin and Galway and other interesting places. But as you will see in a little moment, some aspects of Irish culture and Irish history comprise the entire island. So, for example, prehistoric monuments. Ireland was one of the places with a very strong Celtic presence, one of the places where the original Celtic people kept their culture the longest, and It was also very old, so there are a lot of prehistoric monuments, several thousand of them in Ireland as the whole island, also some of them in the north. Another thing that you'll find quite visible is the legacy of early medieval Christianity in Ireland. That is the legacy of the monastic Christianity, the early medieval monasteries that were built in many places in Ireland, also in the north. Yet another thing that we will see in a moment is the legacy of the mass emigration from Ireland to the British colonies, but especially to America in the 18th century, for economic reasons mostly. The people there were so poor that when the opportunity arose, they would very often go somewhere to look for a better place to live. That is why we have a huge Irish diaspora in English-speaking countries, and especially in the United States of America. Another mass wave of emigration was in the 19th century, in the 1840s, during the so-called potato famine, which devastated the agriculture of Ireland and caused many hundreds of thousands, sometimes some scholars say that even millions of people, to leave Ireland and go to America. So let's look at those 6 counties that belong to the United Kingdom. So the first one is Derry, or Londonderry. Actually, this is the name of the main city in this county, and also the county itself. So there is the city of Derry, or Londonderry, as you can see, quite a historical city with historical defensive walls. Most counties, all but one, so 5 counties of Northern Ireland also surround the largest lake in the United Kingdom, Lough Neagh. You may remember it from our very first class. Lough is the Irish Gaelic word for lake, or loch in the Scottish Gaelic. We are going to talk about Scotland next week. So we have this large body of water in the middle of Northern Ireland. If we move to the east, we get to County Antrim with quite a lot of natural beauty, beaches and headlands, such as the one called Fairhead here. But the most important thing is actually a UNESCO site for nature called Giant's Causeway. This is a very rare geological feature made by the volcanic activity in the region very long ago, which resulted in the creation of stone basalt columns. Sometimes you can see the shafts of the columns in their entirety. Sometimes you see the tops of the columns. They are quite regular, and indeed they look like a pavement or a causeway. There are some very few places in the world with similar rock formations. I actually had a chance of seeing something quite similar in Mexico once, but there is also a part of this geological formation in the west of Scotland. So it really looks like somebody in some legendary past perhaps tried to build a causeway or a bridge between Northern Ireland and Western Scotland. So of course it gave rise to all kinds of legends and stories about a race of giants that built or tried to build this causeway as a bridge between Ireland and Scotland, but of course they did not succeed. Some of the stories involve a love subplot, so there was a man giant and a lady giant, and they fell in love. They saw each other across the sea, and they decided to build a bridge so they would meet, but although they started from both ends, they were not successful. We will probably return to some legends later on in some later class, but that's really a very interesting natural place with some cultural significance as well. Next county is County Down, which features the capital of Northern Ireland, Belfast. Here on one of the photographs you can see the building of the local parliament, so the local assembly still being used after the devolution. It is called Stormont, so this neoclassical building houses the local Northern Irish Assembly. Another thing which is quite typical for Belfast and other cities in Northern Ireland are the murals. And you are probably well familiar with the so-called Troubles. That is effectively a civil war which raged in Northern Ireland in the 20th century. It actually ended quite recently at the turn of the present century with the peace treaty that even resulted with some peace Nobel Prizes. But the Troubles, the whole war, which was very bloody, which included a lot of guerrilla fighting and terrorism, really, so bomb attacks and such things. This was basically between two groups of Irish people, one supporting the union with the United Kingdom and the other supporting the Irish Republic. So some of the people wanted Northern Ireland to remain British, some preferred the entire island to be unified and belong to the Irish Republic. The division lines run also along the religious differences. So the Unionists tended to be Anglican, Protestant, and the Republicans were mostly Catholic, as the majority of the Republic of Ireland. So the memory of this period is visible in many cities in the form of murals, which both sides, both the Republicans and the Unionists, used to advertise their causes in their artistic form on the walls of the buildings. So here we have one such example from Belfast, but you can find similar historical murals in other cities like Derry, for example. So the next county, if we move around Loughrea, is County Armagh, and here we have one of the reconstructed prehistoric sites, Navan Fort, a reconstructed village from the Celtic period, a round house made of wood and with a thatched roof. Another photograph here shows one of the many stately homes which remain in Ireland, not only in the north. This one happens to be in the north. They belonged either to the local aristocracy or sometimes also to the English aristocracy that were granted lands in Ireland and titles as recognition for their services to the English crown. So very often they would live in those beautiful palaces with beautiful gardens. Sometimes they wouldn't even spend a lot of time there. There would be the so-called absentee landlords leaving the maintenance in the hands of hired managers, which unfortunately only added to the misery of the majority of very poor rural population in Ireland. But many of the residences are now museums. They can be visited and admired for their beauty. If we move to County Tyrone, we can find here an example of an authentic prehistoric site. Bigmore stone circles, so the kind of standings of stones that you may recall from Wiltshire and other places in England, which could also be found in Wales, as you could see in the previous part, and as you will see next week, they can also be found in Scotland, especially the western part of Scotland and the Scottish Isles, especially the Hebrides and the Orkneys. But in Ireland, if any one of you is interested in prehistoric sites and standing stones and stone circles and prehistoric burial sites, absolutely go to Ireland, and not only to the north but to the Republic of Ireland as well. See the site, for example, called Newgrange, one of the best preserved and most impressive prehistoric burials. There are some other sites in the vicinity. If you are very interested, there are actually quite a few people who have entire channels on YouTube when they explore the prehistoric sites of the British Isles. We can talk about it during the live meet. But this is something that is very present in the entirety of Ireland, so also in the north. The next image is President Grant Ancestral Home, also in County Tyrone, and this is the home of the Grant family, one of the many poor rural families that left Ireland to emigrate to America, and many of those people, the descendants of these families, became quite successful in later life, and some of them, like the descendants of President Grant, decided to buy and protect the ancestral family home. As you can see, very, very modest, such as many homes of the rural farmers of Ireland. Another family that emigrated from Ireland to America and made a spectacular career there were the Kennedys, of course. But I think they were not from the north. The last county here on our list is County Fermanagh, with an interesting natural feature called Marble Arch Caves. So natural beautiful caves, and also something I already signaled at the beginning of this part, namely a medieval monastery. If you know anything about the history of Christianity in the British Isles, the Irish way was connected with the monasteries rather than the hierarchical system with the bishops that was closer to the Roman way, and which eventually prevailed, but especially in the early Middle Ages, there were many very important monasteries built in many places in Ireland. Probably, if you're interested in this period, you should also go to the Irish Republic and see such sites as the monastery of Clonmacnoise. But this one is very interestingly located on an island in a lake. So another lake, Lough Erne. As you can see here, even on the map, it has a lake island, which of course provided some greater safety for the monks living in the monastery. They still had this watchtower, very typical feature for Irish monasteries, those narrow watchtowers. This one is quite small, but there are larger ones in the Irish Republic to protect against invaders, mostly the Vikings. If you remember from last week, there was a lot of Viking presence in Ireland, and of course what the Vikings would notoriously do was to loot monasteries, looking for some valuable objects and so on. So this is it about Northern Ireland, and in a moment we will move to the discussion of the national parks.